What if I told you that the shortcut to a new reality isn't actually ahead of you at all, but running parallel to where you stand right now? This isn't some poetic metaphor designed to sound profound while leaving you nowhere concrete to go. This is about understanding something that fundamentally changes how transformation works, and it's based on a principle that's been hiding in plain sight within the frameworks of quantum mechanics and neuroscience for decades. Right now, as you're hearing these words, there's a version of your life that's already unfolding in a completely different configuration. The relationship you want already exists in that configuration. The confidence you're building toward already operates naturally there. The financial reality you're working to create is the baseline there. And here's what makes this either the most frustrating or the most liberating thing you'll hear today. You're not separated from that reality by time or distance or worthiness. You're separated from it by something far more subtle and far more within your control than you've been taught to believe. The entire self-help industry has been selling you a map that shows a long, winding road from here to there, complete with obstacles to overcome, lessons to learn, and levels to ascend. But what if that map itself is the problem? What if the very framework of becoming someone new is what keeps you locked into being who you've always been? See, the shortcut to a new reality that nobody talks about isn't about accelerating your journey on that traditional path. It's about recognizing that the path is an illusion created by a fundamental misunderstanding of how consciousness interfaces with possibility. And if you've been working incredibly hard on yourself, doing all the right things according to every book and course and video you've consumed, yet finding yourself in essentially the same emotional landscape with slightly different scenery, then what I'm about to share with you might finally explain why. Because the truth is, you've been trying to build a bridge to a new reality using materials that only exist in your current one. You've been attempting to think your way into a new life while the very thoughts you're using are generated by the identity that created the life you want to leave behind. It's like trying to see a new color using only the wavelengths your eyes have always detected. The receptor itself needs to change before new light can come through. And before we go any further into this, if you feel that subtle recognition, that internal yes that says this is pointing towards something you've been sensing but couldn't quite articulate, then subscribe to this channel, because we're going deep into territories where science, consciousness, and practical transformation intersect in ways that actually produce measurable shifts in your lived experience. The premise that changes everything is this: you don't need to become someone new to access a new reality. You need to recognize that the version of you that already inhabits that reality is not a future self, but a present possibility that you've been systematically trained to tune out. Think of it this way: your consciousness isn't a single point moving through time from past to future. It's more like a receiver capable of tuning into multiple broadcast streams simultaneously. Each stream represents a different configuration of your life, a different set of circumstances, relationships, opportunities, and challenges. The stream you're currently experiencing isn't the only one being broadcast. It's simply the one your receiver has been calibrated to pick up based on patterns established long ago, most of them before you even knew you had a choice in the matter. The shortcut to a new reality, then, isn't about changing yourself so dramatically that you become compatible with a different broadcast. It's about understanding that your receiver, your consciousness, can be recalibrated almost instantly once you understand what's actually controlling the dial. And here's where it gets interesting, where we circle back to that parallel version of your life that's already operating. That version isn't waiting for you to arrive. It's not a reward for sufficient self-improvement. It exists right now as a legitimate possibility in what physicists call the quantum field of potentiality. Every decision you didn't make but could have made generated a branch in possibility space. Every action you thought about taking but talked yourself out of opened a doorway you didn't walk through. Those doorways didn't close, those branches didn't disappear. They continued unfolding, creating entire storylines of cause and effect that are just as real as the one you're calling your life, simply operating at a different frequency of probability. And probability, as it turns out, isn't random. It responds to focus, emotion, and repetition in ways that give you far more agency than you've been led to believe. Let me walk you through exactly how this works, because understanding the mechanism is what makes it actionable rather than abstract. In quantum physics, there's a well-documented phenomenon called observer effect, which demonstrates that the act of observation literally collapses waves of possibility into particles of reality. Before you observe, before you measure, before you direct focused attention towards something, it exists in a superposition of all possible states. The moment your consciousness engages, one of those states crystallizes into what we call physical reality. Now, translate this from the laboratory into your daily life. Your attention isn't passive. It's not simply noticing what's already there. Your sustained attention, especially when coupled with emotional intensity and repetitive focus, is actively selecting which version of reality crystallizes into your experience. But here's the part that most people miss, the part that keeps them running in circles. They think they're focusing on what they want, but if you actually examine where their attention rests throughout the day, it's predominantly on what they're trying to avoid, what they're afraid of losing, what they don't have yet, what's wrong with their current situation. And because attention is creative, not passive, they keep regenerating variations of the same circumstances they're trying to escape. It's like trying to drive somewhere new by only looking in the rearview mirror. You're technically pointing forward, but your attention is locked on where you've been, so you keep unconsciously steering back toward familiar territory. The neuroscience confirms this from a different angle. Your brain operates through neural networks that form through repetition. Every time you think a thought, feel an emotion, or take an action, you're strengthening specific neural pathways while allowing others to weaken. Dr. Donald Hebb's research established that neurons that fire together wire together, meaning your brain physically reorganizes itself based on where you consistently direct your mental energy. Now combine these two frameworks. You have a quantum field responsive to focused observation, and you have a brain that hardwires patterns based on repetition. What this means is that the shortcut to a new reality isn't about willpower or positive thinking or vision boards, though those can play supporting roles. The shortcut is about consciously and consistently directing your observation, your emotional energy, and your repetitive focus toward the version of reality you want to experience as if it's already happening, not as a future goal, but as a present truth you're tuning into. When you do this with sufficient consistency, something remarkable happens. The neural networks in your brain begin to reorganize around this new pattern of focus. Your reticular activating system, the part of your brain that filters what information reaches your conscious awareness, starts highlighting opportunities, resources, and synchronicities that were always there but invisible to your previous pattern of attention. And simultaneously, in the quantum field, your sustained focus on a specific possibility increases the probability of that version of reality manifesting into physical form. Think of it like this. Imagine you're standing in a vast library where every book represents a different version of your life story. Most people spend their entire lives rereading the same book over and over, occasionally glancing at the shelf and wishing they could read a different one. The shortcut to a new reality is realizing you can simply pick up a different book and start reading it. The act of reading it, of giving it your sustained attention and emotional investment, is what makes it real. Not metaphorically real, actually, tangibly, experientially real. But here's where most of us, myself included when I first encountered these concepts, make the critical errors that sabotage the entire process. The first error is subtle but devastating. We try to access a new reality while maintaining the exact same daily routines, thought patterns, and behavioral responses that created our current one. We wake up at the same time, consume the same information, have the same conversations, react to triggers in the same ways, and then wonder why nothing changes even though we're visualizing and affirming and journaling. But think about it logically. If your current reality is the result of habitual patterns operating on autopilot, then accessing a different reality requires different patterns. Not eventually, not after you feel ready. Now, immediately. In the next decision you make. Research in behavioral psychology shows that approximately 95% of your daily actions are habitual. meaning they're running on subconscious programming without conscious input. If you don't deliberately interrupt those patterns, you're essentially voting for your current reality 95 times out of every 100 choices you make. The math simply doesn't work in favor of change. The second error compounds the first. We seek evidence of change in our external circumstances before we're willing to fully commit to the internal shift. We say things like, "When I see progress, then I'll really believe this works. When the money shows up, then I'll trust the process. When the relationship improves, then I'll know I'm on the right track." But this is exactly backward. The external reality you're experiencing right now is the result of observation patterns you established weeks or months ago. There's a lag time between shifting your internal focus and seeing the external reflection. If you need to see the change before you'll sustain the new pattern of focus, you'll quit right before the breakthrough. Then interpret the lack of immediate results as proof that it doesn't work. It's like planting a seed, then digging it up every day to check if it's growing, then concluding that gardening is a myth because nothing grew. The third error is perhaps the most insidious. We approach this entire process from a state of lack, urgency, and desperation. We want the new reality because we can't stand the current one. We need things to change because we're suffering. We're scrambling for solutions because we're afraid. And all of that emotional intensity seems like it should help, like it should provide fuel for transformation. But energy doesn't work that way. Desperation is a low-frequency state that attracts more circumstances to be desperate about. Research in psychoneuroimmunology has shown that chronic stress states actually suppress the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for creative problem-solving and future planning, while amplifying the amygdala's fear responses. You literally cannot think your way into a new reality while operating from survival mode. Your biology won't allow it. Many of us have been doing this for years, trying to manifest abundance from a place of financial anxiety, trying to attract healthy relationships from a place of loneliness, trying to create confidence from a place of shame. And we keep getting more refined versions of the same results because the emotional frequency we're broadcasting is the instruction we're sending to the field. Now I need you to hear this, and I mean really let it land. If you've been working on yourself for months or years, applying every technique you can find, and still finding yourself in essentially the same reality with minor variations, that doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It doesn't mean the universe has forgotten about you or that you're somehow blocked or cursed or incapable. It means you were never taught the actual mechanics of how reality selection works. You were taught to try harder, push more, force outcomes, override your circumstances through sheer determination. But the shortcut to a new reality doesn't require force. It requires precision. You weren't given the right tools. You were handed a map that doesn't match the actual territory. And that's not your fault. That's the result of living in a culture that understands achievement but doesn't understand consciousness, that values visible effort but ignores invisible alignment. The incredible news, the thing that can shift everything starting right now, is that there's a different approach, one that doesn't require you to be someone you're not, but rather to recognize and embody the version of you that already exists in the reality you want to experience. That version isn't a stranger. It's not some distant, idealized fantasy self. It's you, operating from a different set of assumptions about what's possible and what's normal. And the distance between where you are and where that version operates isn't measured in time or effort. It's measured in coherence, in how aligned your thoughts, emotions, and actions are with the reality you're claiming as yours. If what you're hearing right now resonates, if something inside you is saying, yes, this is what I've been missing, then like this video, not for me, but because there's someone in your life, someone in your network who needs to hear this today, someone who's been trying so hard and wondering why it's not working. And when you share something that has the potential to unlock someone's path, you're not just helping them. You're reinforcing your own understanding, strengthening your own alignment, participating in the exact frequency of generosity and abundance that allows the shortcut to a new reality to work. So now I want you to pause with me and ask yourself something with complete honesty, without judgment, without the need to have an immediate answer. How much of your energy each day is spent defending your current reality instead of observing the one you want to experience? Notice, I didn't ask how much time you spend thinking about change or planning for improvement. I'm asking how much of your actual attention, the raw currency of consciousness, is invested in maintaining your current story about who you are, what you're capable of, what's available to you, what's safe, what's realistic. Because here's what many of us in this community have discovered. We think we're focusing on change, but when we actually track our internal dialogue and emotional patterns throughout the day, we're overwhelmingly focused on confirming what we already believe about ourselves and our lives. We're gathering evidence for the familiar story, not the new one. And here's the deeper question, the one that might unlock something if you let it. What would you have to stop being right about in order to access the reality you claim you want? What belief about yourself, about how life works, about what you deserve or what's possible for someone like you, what would you have to release completely? Not just intellectually agree it's unhelpful, but actually stop referencing it as truth. You don't have to answer out loud. You don't even need words. Just notice what arises. Because for people like us, those who've already begun to recognize that reality is more flexible than we were taught, these aren't just philosophical questions. They're diagnostic tools. They reveal exactly where our focus has been locked, where we've been defending the old reality even while claiming we want a new one. And remember what I said at the beginning, there's a version of your life already unfolding in a different configuration. The shortcut to that reality isn't about building something from scratch. It's about releasing the grip on what's been holding your attention captive. Now we get practical, because understanding without application is just entertainment. And you didn't come here to be entertained. You came here because something in you knows there's a more direct path than you've been shown. If you genuinely want to access the shortcut to a new reality, you need 3 daily practices that function as recalibration tools for your consciousness. These aren't complicated. Complexity is often where commitment goes to die. These are simple, but they require consistency. And consistency is what rewires both your neural networks and your quantum field interactions. The first practice is what I call morning reality selection. Within the first 5 minutes of waking, before your phone, before other people's agendas flood your awareness, sit in stillness and ask yourself, which version of my life am I tuning into today? Not which version do I hope to build someday, but which existing possibility am I selecting right now? Then, and this is critical, generate the primary emotion of that reality in your body. If the reality you're selecting is characterized by deep security, feel security as a physical sensation in your chest and belly. If it's characterized by creative flow, feel that expansive, energized sensation. If it's characterized by connection, feel the warmth of being seen and valued. You're not pretending. You're not faking. You're activating a neural and energetic pattern that exists as a latent possibility within you. Every time you do this, you're training your nervous system to recognize and sustain a new baseline. The science here is clear. When you generate an elevated emotional state without waiting for external circumstances to create it, you're literally installing new neural pathways. You're teaching your brain that this state is accessible, independent of what's happening around you. And that independence is what gives you sovereignty over your reality selection. The second practice is decision point awareness. Throughout your day, you'll encounter hundreds of small decisions. What to eat, how to respond to a message, whether to follow through on a commitment or postpone it, what to consume, who to engage with, how to spend your evening. Each of these decisions is a vote. You're either voting for the reality you've been experiencing or the reality you're choosing to experience. Before each significant decision, pause for 3 seconds and ask, does this choice align with the version of reality I selected this morning? Then choose accordingly, even if, especially if, it's uncomfortable. Because every aligned choice, every decision that matches the frequency of your desired reality, rather than your habitual reality, is strengthening the signal. You're literally increasing the probability of that version crystallizing into your experience. And here's what people who are applying this consistently are discovering. After a few weeks of conscious decision-making, opportunities start appearing that seem random, but aren't. Resources show up, conversations happen, synchronicities multiply. This isn't magic or luck. It's your reticular activating system responding to your new pattern of focus, and your quantum field responding to your new pattern of observation. The third practice is evening reality anchoring. Before sleep, instead of reviewing everything that went wrong or didn't happen, close your eyes and identify 3 specific elements from the reality you're selecting that you experience today, even in small ways. Maybe you had a moment of genuine confidence. Maybe you made a decision from abundance instead of scarcity. Maybe you felt connected or creative or at peace. Acknowledge these moments not as exceptions to your normal life, but as evidence that the new reality is already accessible. You're training your perception to notice what matches your desired reality, instead of what matches your old story. And when you do this consistently, your brain begins to filter for more of these moments, creating a feedback loop that accelerates the entire process. These 3 practices take less than 20 minutes total per day, but they're doing something profound. They're shifting the default setting of your consciousness from your historical reality to your chosen reality. And that shift, maintained consistently, is the shortcut. And now I need to tell you something that might be the most important part of this entire conversation. Something that other content creators often avoid, because it doesn't sound as inspiring, but it's absolutely essential if you're going to sustain this path. You're going to have days where you completely forget everything you've learned here. You're going to wake up in old patterns, react from old fears, make decisions from your historical identity instead of your chosen one. You're going to doubt whether any of this actually works. You're going to feel frustrated that change isn't happening fast enough. And when those days come, and they will come, that doesn't mean you've lost your progress. It doesn't mean the shortcut to a new reality stopped working. It means you're human, and human consciousness doesn't operate in straight lines. The path isn't linear ascension, where once you understand something, you've mastered it forever. It's more like a spiral. Sometimes you'll pass through similar emotional territories, similar challenges, similar patterns. But you're not actually back where you started. You're encountering those patterns from a higher level of awareness, with new tools, with more capacity to choose differently. The difference between someone who transforms their reality and someone who stays stuck isn't that one never stumbles and the other does. The difference is speed of recovery. How quickly do you notice you've slipped back into old patterns? How compassionate are you with yourself when you notice? How deliberately do you choose to return to the aligned state? Those who are walking this path with us, this entire community that's learning to consciously select reality, we're all experiencing the same thing. Nobody has this perfectly figured out. We all have moments of doubt, days of misalignment, periods where the old reality seems more real than the new one we're choosing. You're not alone in this. You're not the only one who struggles. And precisely because you're not alone is why you need to be gentle with yourself when you stumble and fiercely committed to getting back up. Every time you notice misalignment and consciously return to your chosen reality, you're building what I call coherence muscle. And over time, that muscle gets so strong that your chosen reality becomes your default state instead of something you have to work to access. So we've reached the point where everything we've explored together transitions from information into transformation, and that transition requires something from you. Something small, but symbolically powerful. I want to invite you to mark this moment, to create a tangible anchor that says, "This is when I decided reality could be different." Go to the comments and share something from your truth. It could be the version of reality you're consciously selecting starting now. It could be the insight from this video that landed deepest for you, the thing you're carrying forward into your life. It could be the specific next step you're committing to taking after hearing this. Or it could be a personal story about how this connects to your own experience, how you've already glimpsed this principle at work in your life, or how you've been unknowingly blocking it. Whatever you choose to share, do it consciously. Because when you put something into words and release it publicly, you're doing more than typing a comment. You're collapsing a wave of possibility into a particle of commitment. You're taking an internal shift and making it external, which is precisely the mechanism we've been discussing. That act, that simple gesture of declaration, is a bridge between the reality you've been experiencing and the reality you're now choosing. And here's what I promised you at the beginning, the answer to the question that's been hanging in the air since we started. Why is there a shortcut to a new reality that nobody talks about? And why does it work fast when it works? The answer is this: because the new reality already exists. You're not building it from nothing. You're not waiting for circumstances to align. You're not earning your way into it through sufficient suffering or effort. You're recognizing it as an already present possibility and choosing to observe it consistently until it becomes your dominant experience. The shortcut works fast because you're not actually traveling a distance. You're shifting a focus, and focus can change in an instant. The work isn't in the shifting. The work is in sustaining the new focus long enough for your external reality to catch up with your internal selection. That's why the practices matter. That's why consistency matters. That's why every aligned decision matters. Each one is reinforcing the signal, increasing the probability, training your nervous system to hold the new frequency as normal instead of foreign. From this moment forward, you're no longer the person who is searching for answers about how to change your reality. You're now someone who understands that the shortcut to a new reality isn't about changing at all. It's about selecting. It's about observing the version of your life that already exists as possibility and giving it your sustained attention until it solidifies into experience. You're someone who knows that every thought is a vote, every emotion is a signal, every decision is choosing which version of reality gets to be dominant in your experience. This isn't the end of your journey. This is actually the beginning of the real work, the work that produces tangible results instead of just consuming more information. And if you're new to this channel, if you sense there's more to explore about reality selection, about consciousness mechanics, about the intersection of quantum physics and practical transformation, I invite you to dive into the playlists linked in the description. You'll find a complete pathway there, content that builds on what we've covered today and takes you deeper into each of these concepts with practical applications you can implement immediately. And if this vision resonates with your path, if you feel like you belong in this space where science and consciousness and real transformation come together, subscribe to this channel. Because we're going to continue exploring these territories, unpacking the mechanisms of how reality actually works and how you can work with it consciously instead of being at its mercy. Every video we create is another step deeper into this understanding, another tool for your personal transformation, another piece of the larger map that shows you not just where you want to go, but how consciousness itself navigates possibility. The shortcut to a new reality isn't about speed for speed's sake. It's about efficiency. It's about understanding that you don't need to take the long way around when there's a direct path available. That direct path has always been there. It's been operating in your life whether you knew it or not. The only difference now is that you're aware of it. You can use it consciously. You can select your reality deliberately instead of inheriting it by default. And that awareness, that capacity, is what transforms everything. Welcome to the next phase of your expansion. Let's continue this journey together.